I trained I did my first part in Queen Charlotte's, which was a midwife's hospital, where I was very well trained. I wasn't educated, I was trained. It was a training, not an education. But I was very well trained. And then I did my second part in Paisley, which is a very, very deprived, was then a very deprived old mill town in Scotland. And there I'd come from Queen Charlotte's, where I thought I was the bee's knees. And I came to work or be also trained in Paisley, where I learned a lot of very good practical midwifery from midwives who were very rough and ready and got on with it. And it was a very good mixture, a very good training there. And then I came back to Queen Charlotte's and did a postgraduate year there. And then I took a post as a district midwife, domiciliary midwife employed by the Middlesex County Council, because in those days, domiciliary midwifery, district midwives, district nurses, health visitors were employees of local authorities. And I was an employee of Middlesex County Council and had a district in East Twickenham, which I did on a bike. And all the women in East Twickenham who were having their babies at home were looked after by me. And there were women who went to hospital and women who elected to have their babies at home, and they were mine. That was my district. We were beginning to be encouraged to work with GPs. But I had there was the local authority antenatal clinic, which was run by the midwives. And I did my own thing, I did my own practice there. It was like, except that the women didn't choose me, they were allocated to me. But it was very similar to independent practice in that I had my own practice, I had my own caseload.
You were on call for them?
And I was on call. We worked, I think it was 12 days on, 3 days off. And it was very good.
Hard life.
And I did it on a bike in East Twickenham. When I look back on it, I was very inexperienced. Though I'd had good basic training. And we used pethidine a lot. Symptometrin wasn't around. We had ergometrin, which we used occasionally.
Gas and air?
We had gas and oxygen and trilene. I had trilene on my bike. Yes, it went rapidly out of fashion. It was discovered not to have a very good effect on the liver. But I was a district midwife there for, I think, coming up 3 years. And and then I had 7 years off. My husband and I built a boat and we went sailing, and I also had my first pregnancy, and I ruptured a disc when I was 22 weeks pregnant. So I spent the rest of my pregnancy on traction. And but anyway, that's water under the bridge. So I took 7 years off, and I had 3 children, and we went sailing, went offshore sailing.
With the children? With
the children. And then I came back in 1969, I think we came back. Yes, we came back in 1969, and things had changed. We moved to the Isle of Wight, and I took a job as a district nurse midwife on the Isle of Wight.
So that was a combination?
That was a combination. I was district nurse midwife for a couple of years there. And then there was the National Health Service Act, where domiciliary midwives, district nurses, district midwives, health visitors became National Health Service employees and no longer employees of the local authority. and we became under the National Health Service and under the hospital, and it was very much under the hospital, and I found this very difficult, very, very difficult.
I hadn't realised it was so recent.
It was 1974, I think, the NHS Act. It was implemented in the Isle of Wight, and I was expected to work under the hospital. And Peel had reported just around the same time. Peel had said that provision should be made for all women to give birth in hospital, with no evidence to back it. And community district midwife was expected to do antenatal and postnatal care, and you could take women if you wanted into hospital to do the what was it called, the domino system, which was you attended the woman at home, took her in, delivered her, and transferred her home in 2 or 3 days. But I was expected to conform to hospital policy. I came up against hospital policy, and while I'd been away sailing and having babies, hospital policy had said that all women had to have episiotomies, and that was my first meeting with hospital policy, dictated by the obstetrician. All women had to have an episiotomy, and I'd always rather sort of prided myself on being able to enable women to birth their babies without perineal trauma. And I found the man diktat about episiotomy very hard to take. But, you know, the hospital midwives had been doing this for some time. And they said, well, you know, Mary, when in Rome, you do as Rome does, and if you really feel that bad about it, drop the scissors on the floor. And to my shame, I assaulted women with the scissors. I made episiotomies. And to my shame, I dropped the scissors on the floor. And I thought, and then I thought to myself, I'm a professional woman. I'm a midwife, for God's sake. And I observed a midwife making an episiotomy after the head was out. And she said, I'm not going to be told off by him for any woman. And I thought, I'm not going to do this. And I thought about it, and I went to see the obstetrician, and I informed him that I would no longer be making an episiotomy unless in my clinical judgment it was warranted. And here was the address of the Central Midwives Board, to whom he should address his complaints about my practice. And I went down the corridor to the sluice and burst into tears, you know, and expected the heavens to fall upon me. And they didn't.
You were one of the first few people that stood up to him.
And I continued my practice, and I didn't make episiotomies. And people said, well, if Mary Cronk can get away with it. And I didn't. But it was very, very difficult. It was very difficult to conform.